So we are live. Hello, everybody out there in YouTube world. Welcome to Badass College Apps with Admissions Mom, where we talk about applying to college and then we stop and take a breath. Today, I am so very, very, very excited to have somebody I've been really learning from literally since I first began on the subreddit A2C, because she was already writing there when I came on. And that was back in 2016. And so we're so lucky to have Marcella De Laurentiis, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
From helpwithcollegeapps.com or November on Reddit with 2 R's, no E at the end. And super excited to have her here to talk about Waitlist, how to deal with Waitlist, what to do for Waitlist, how to write your letter of continued interest. So if you've been waitlisted or you're expecting or hoping or not hoping to be waitlisted, it's a really good time for you to be here today. And of course, we always have Carly here with us helping out, helping us in the chat and helping us kind of behind the scenes and keeping us all organized. I see we have a few people in the chat already. Hello, Venti. Hello, Nathaniel. So happy to have y'all here with us. And as always, don't hesitate to jump in with questions. If you have questions for us or just comments, or don't hesitate to help each other out. You guys, a lot of you are super experienced with college admissions now. And so you can also share your advice to your friends in the chat. So don't worry. Go ahead and do that. I love to watch that. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Marcella, and tell a little bit more about you. I know that you were an admissions reader for a reviewer for both Berkeley and Chicago, which is going to be really helpful for us now. But tell us a little bit more about us and about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I joined the University of Chicago admissions office in 2012, 2013. UChicago is my alma mater. I evaluated over 600 applications for admission. And then I joined Berkeley's Management, Entrepreneurship, and Technology program in 2017, 2018. That's the dual business engineering program. We had a 2% acceptance rate at the time. Now I hear it's rumored sub 1%.
Wow.
And yeah, so I evaluated over 400 applications for there and got a lot of really wonderful insight into how students can differentiate themselves in the admissions process. So now I work on the other side of the table. I've actually been doing it for about 10 years now, helping students at helpwithapps.com. And it's so much fun seeing my kids get admitted, and so much better than denying kids on the admission side.
I can imagine. And Carly, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm currently at a community college majoring in communications. I'm also one of the moderators on r/applying to college, and I'm the owner of the Discord server. So you can find me on either Reddit at ucarlyc999 or on Discord Carly6241.
Awesome. Thanks. And I am Carolyn, also known as Admissions Mom. You can find me on Reddit as Admissions Mom, and you can also find me on Instagram as Admissions Mom. You used to be able to find me on Twitter, but I took it off my phone because it was bumming me out too much right now. So I'm not on Twitter right now, but you can definitely still find me on Instagram and Reddit. And send me messages. I love to hear from you. I love to talk to you about college. And we're just going to start jumping right in and talking about Waitlist right now and what to do. So first of all, any of you in the chat, have you been waitlisted yet? Do you know if you've been waitlisted or deferred, or you're just trying to get information in case? Let's see if we get any responses here. And while I'm waiting for your responses, I'm going to pull up my slides. And Marcella, smile.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a picture here.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Okay.
But I'm laughing because waitlists, so many more students these years have gotten waitlisted than ever before. And so I feel like if a kid isn't waitlisted, that is a feat. For sure.
Exactly. So let's see what we got here. So we've got Venti. I got waitlisted today from my favorite school. Nathaniel, I've been deferred, so it feels like it. Had to write the Loki. Got a yep from Yana. A yes from Simon. Got waitlisted from Northeastern, from Popcorn. Waitlisted at UW from Simon. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some insight into that today. Let's see, we got another one here. Waitlisted at Bates from Yana. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some insight into what to do about the wait list. And of course, as you know, every school is going to be a little different, but I can't wait to hear what Marcella has to say here. So I just want to start off with this point is that it might hurt if you get waitlisted, especially if it's a school you were expecting to get accepted to, for sure. And it's okay. Like, allow yourself to feel those feelings. Some people are excited about a wait list because it was school they weren't expecting to get into, but it's okay to feel those feelings if you're disappointed and hurt. And I just want to get that out of the way before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of all the stuff. And Simon asks, can we give us some insight into the Loki? And for sure, we're going to do that. All right. Oh, my next other thing. And Marcella, I don't know if you like to make a point about this, but make sure your phone is charged and working. I can't tell you how many kids are like, I missed the call. Because this is what I've learned is that colleges will often call you about accepting an offer before they offer it written down. Is that something that do you think that's pretty universal?
It happened with one of my students last year at Duke. Duke gave them a call and said, "Are you interested?" And they said yes. And then they said, "Okay, check your email. We'll follow up with you." And sure enough, the next day they were admitted off the wait list. So I don't think that if you don't answer the phone, then they're going to the next kid down the line and you're done. But I think that it can show a lot of enthusiasm and you can capitalize on their enthusiasm for you.
Yeah, I mean, don't feel like you have to answer your phone in the middle of your calculus test, right? Like, but maybe look for those messages, and kind of like return them if you can, or listen to them. And that's why I say set up your voicemail so they can leave a message. I know a lot of kids don't even use their voicemail. I don't really use my voicemail, but this might be a time that you want to have it ready to go. All right. Oh, that's not supposed to say lockdown. That's supposed to say lowdown. That's typo. Sorry, guys. But anyway, so this is the nitty gritty lowdown, not lockdown. We're not locking anything down. And this might be changing this piece of advice right at the first because of how many people are waitlisted. But I used to always say, like, don't plan on being accepted to your waitlist school. What I've seen in the last few years is that a lot more kids are getting off the wait list. What are you seeing, Marcella?
Yeah. So I wrote it down. But I do waitlist strategy sessions each year where students who didn't work with me and trying to get off the waitlist, and we kind of like figure out how do they pitch themselves. Last year, acceptances to Duke, Northwestern, 2 to Stanford. The year before, Stanford, Dartmouth, Brown, WashU, Berkeley, Georgetown, Rice, Barnard, Michigan, and
Wow.
Pomona. So I tell kids, don't give up. I mean, sure, there are some schools that have accepted 0 students off the wait list in the last 5 years, and pat yourself on the back that you're waitlisted, but you're probably not getting off. But I don't think that kids should quit.
Can you give any thoughts to who the schools that you, as far as you know, have had 0 kids taken off the wait list?
Yeah, I do. And I wrote those down. So I had a student admitted off of MIT's waitlist a couple years ago, but the last few years have been 0, 0, 0. So in 2021, they waitlisted 617 kids. They admitted 0. In 2020, 621 kids. They admitted 0.
This is MIT. This is MIT.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I pulled it up Northeastern, UW, and Bates. Bates waitlisted last year 2,473 students, admitted 2 of them.
Wow.
Northeastern doesn't report it. University of Washington accepted a lot last year. So they waitlisted 10,239. 4,565 decided to stay on the wait list, and 775 were ultimately admitted. So I'm getting this data from the common data set. So if you Google the university's name and common data set, then you can look for, you can just do Command F and wait, and you should find it right away where how many students were waitlisted last year, if they were, if they admitted, and that kind of tells you, should I go after it?
Yeah. And Carly, would you mind writing down, could you put what she just said in the chat? So the common data set, Google that, and the
Yeah.
college's name and Command F wait to help
Yeah,
find
and
like
I'll
the
drop
wait list.
Bates' link in there too, just so that you guys can kind of play around with that. Oh, wait, can I
Okay, cool.
enter the chat?
You're gonna have to go to
That's okay, don't worry about it.
yeah,
It's
you'll
been
have
good.
to go to YouTube to do it, but you can tell it to Carly and she can put it in.
No worries.
So Simon asked a good question. I'm going to just bring this up here right now because it's an important question, and that I think we'll just add it. Are waitlists ranked or are they a lottery?
So the common data set will often say if those wait lists are ranked. In my experience, if it's ranked, then there's little you can do to negotiate your way off. But I don't view a non-ranked waitlist as a lottery. They're not just putting names in a hat and picking randomly. It is based on demonstrated interest. Are you a sure bet? If they if they offer you admission, are you going to say yes? And also the value that you can bring to that institution. So we'll talk about this in greater detail. But in your low key, you really want to sell the value that you could bring.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So, lockdown. Sorry about that again. So, okay, a few other just important pieces of information to get out of the way. You can expect spots on as many wait lists as you like. And if you have decided on a college where you've deposited and you choose to go to a waitlisted school, then you're accepted. Then yes, you can go ahead and go to the waitlisted school where you've accepted a spot, but you might lose that deposit. Also, I think you should accept a spot somewhere. What do you think, Marcella?
Well, it depends. If you're really thrilled with the schools that you've been admitted to, you don't need to go after those wait lists. Let some other kid get off the wait list there. Or if you just want to be done with this process. And I think that's totally fair that you just want to deposit and get super jazzed about the school that you're going to and not daydream about a different university. It's totally fine. But I don't think that there's much to lose by saying, yes, I'll stay on the wait list or writing a letter of continued interest.
Do you think, though, for the students who are staying on the wait list at school or schools, do you think they should still accept a spot somewhere else?
Yes,
Um, okay.
definitely. Yeah, unless you're thinking of taking a gap year, but even so, I would deposit somewhere and take the summer to think about that gap year option. Or
Okay.
community college, obviously a great option, but
Right.
I would deposit somewhere.
Yeah, so I like for you to kind of like mentally fall in love with the school. One piece of advice that I saw that somebody gave within the last few years, I can't remember what it was, but to fall in love with one of your accepted schools, one thing that can kind of be a fun activity to do is to make a course list and think about and all the activities that you want to do there. So even if you're on a wait list somewhere else, you're like mentally investing in one of these schools that has accepted you. I think that's a really important emotional and mental step to do as you move forward. Also, don't let go of your accepted spots. So let's say you've, given a deposit, you've said yes to somewhere, and then you get off the wait list. Don't give up that accepted spot until the financial aid is worked out. How does financial aid work? Because I don't really know this, Marcella, and I hope you can help me with this. How does it work for waitlisted kids? Is it generally just as generous?
It depends on the school for sure. So some universities that say that they are need blind and meet full need will do the exact same for a student off the wait list. But there are some other institutions that are need aware throughout the entire process or just need aware on the wait list.
Right.
So even some schools who are need blind otherwise might focus on students who they think can be full pay in the waitlist process. I don't think it's a terrible idea, um, if your finances have changed to say that in the letter of continued interest. I wouldn't come right out on it, but if you say something like, "I've talked to my family, this is my dream institution. If I'm admitted, there will be nothing standing in my way, including, the cost of attendance, to come," for instance.
So, this is an interesting point that Nathaniel brought up. I'm going to bring it here. He says there's a current lawsuit about that going around right now involving schools not being need blind for the wait list. Do you know about that?
I know about a challenge to financial aid offers between different universities. So a lot of universities, including my alma mater, were included in a challenge that they are, colluding with one another to not offer more advantageous financial aid packages to students that they're all clamoring to get.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure of all of the details, but it should be exciting to follow in the months to come.
Yeah. So many lawsuits to follow.
I know.
Okay. So, and you kind of alluded to this. If you don't have a school you're ready to commit to, there are still lots of schools out there. You mentioned also you could do community college, you could take a gap year, but there's still all sorts of colleges at this point accepting applications. And in May, last year they did it in April. There'll be the NACAC list of schools who still are accepting applications even way beyond their deadline. So I've worked with plenty of students on through Reddit, especially, who are going to the colleges. They're attending the colleges that they got into and applied to from that NACAC list. So
Mhm.
don't hesitate to do that. That doesn't mean you don't hold on to your waitlist offers if you don't want to, if you want to keep them. Keeping up the grades. Talk to us about that. Like, because so many kids, it's like, man, it's spring semester, senior year. Like, they just
Oh,
want to
yeah.
have fun.
Oh, yeah. I've had 6 or 7 kids threatened with rescission, being rescinded because of their grades or their behavior. One kid, did get rescinded because of drinking. So that was bad. So I would absolutely maintain those grades. Now, remember, if you are a straight A student, you get a B plus, you are not going to get rescinded. In my experience, it's a pattern of C's that can be problematic. I have not had any students get rescinded grade wise, even if their university has said, hey, what's going on with these grades? But that's because those students have provided documentation and valid excuses. So a mental health issue, a physical health issue, if you got COVID, etc. Make sure you're communicating with your teachers and your counselors if you're struggling so that somebody can go to bat for you there.
That's always a good idea. That's whether you're being waitlisted or not, if you're having
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
And I get this all the time. A lot of students will drop classes and not tell their university, and that can also cause you to be rescinded. So Berkeley told one of my students last year, you have to complete the course over the summer before you get
Oh,
here in the fall, or your acceptance will be, rescinded. So that student had to go find a class to do the second semester of that.
wow.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So I would encourage students to, if you are dropping a class, if you changed a class that was reported on your application, contact those universities right away, especially if you've been admitted, just so that you can weigh the pros and cons of like having to finish that class when making your ultimate decision on where to enroll.
Great advice. And if you're waitlisted, yeah, you definitely want to keep your grades up because, I mean, maybe one B plus is okay, but you don't want to give them a reason to not take you off the list if they're looking at you. And
Totally.
definitely don't do anything stupid. Like, don't go get arrested for drinking or do something racist or illegal on social media. Like, you're just not going to get your offer then. I mean, you might, even if you had been accepted, you might get rescinded, but you're definitely not going to get off the wait list. All right, I'm going to look at some questions and pull them up here. Let's see. This is going back to. I'm going to actually skip that one for a second. I'm going to go to popcorns. Okay. When you say need blind, does that mean they just see if you applied for financial aid, or do they see how much your EFC is?
So in my experience, Need Aware sees how much your EFC is. And a couple years ago, I attended a talk by Macalester, Colorado College, Carleton, and St. Olaf, and how they talked about Need Aware was they would have a certain pot of money and they would take like their top, let's say 300 kids, irrespective of how much money they needed. And then when they're starting to get low in that pot of money, they start looking at, okay, 301 needs full financial aid. So let's admit 302, 303, 304, 305 who can pay their way. Now we can admit 301. Now we go to number 306 and so on. I haven't worked for a need aware school, so I can't say set in stone that that's true. That's just what I've heard. So if it comes to the wait list, they might be looking for how badly do we want to admit the student off the wait list? What value would they bring to our institution versus how much money would they take out of that pot.
Okay. Let's see. What do you think the logistics are regarding being a transfer student in one of those NACAC schools and attempting to transfer to a more academically rigorous school? So I think what you're trying to see, Simon, is like, I don't get into my first choice schools this year. So I'm going to go to one of those NACAC schools, one of the schools still accepting applications, and then trying to transfer. Is that what you're trying to say? Because let's see. I think that's what he's trying to say. Let's just assume that's what he's trying to say. So what do you think? Like transferring to super highly rejective colleges is just hard, period.
It
Yeah.
is. I have kids do it every year. So I would say it's possible for sure. But remember that there's no guarantees and that you have to attend an institution, you have to pay money. Yeah, you want to make friends and get involved while
Right.
you're there. Remember too that if only a semester has transpired before you're applying to transfer, there's not a whole lot to go off of. We've got your grades, but your letters of recommendation from your college professors might be fairly weak because you don't know them. You might be in a class of 500 students. Your extracurriculars might be fairly weak because you haven't done much. So you have a better chance, in my experience, trying to apply as a sophomore year transfer. But yeah, I would say go for it, try it, but also don't have that be your only plan.
Right. And if you enter college expecting to transfer, you need to enter college in the exact same way as you would if you weren't expecting to transfer. You have to be engaged, you have to make excellent grades, you have to get to know your professor. Almost you probably have to be more engaged. You have to get to know your professors, you have to go to study groups, you have to, like all the things, like you got to really jump right in. And in fact, sometimes that can help you kind of like learn that you really do like where you are. But it also don't let it like keep you from making friends, keep you from engaging, because then you're going to tank your application anyway. Okay, I'm going to quickly see. Let's see. Can you talk about how your second semester grades are used in relation to waitlist? Not in terms of being rescinded, but if they're used to actually determine whether you're admitted off the waitlist.
Yeah. So I could only speak from helping students apply because I wasn't part of the waitlist processes at Berkeley or U Chicago. In my experience, great grades will help a student, and I think that weak grades are inevitably going to hurt a candidate. So I wouldn't get a slew of C's, but if you receive strong grades in second semester, definitely share that, and then
Yeah.
also share the additional value you would bring extracurricularly or intellectually.
Okay. I said I would take the AP bio exam in my applications, but decided not to take it. Should I contact universities about that? I haven't been admitted or rejected yet. So this is not about a waitlist
I
question, but
wouldn't.
no,
Yeah.
you wouldn't. Interest. Yeah.
No.
Just for the exam. No, if you're not dropping the course.
No.
Yeah. A lot of kids don't take the test. Okay. If I applied for finance, I want to go back to that. The one school that I know that might have an issue with you're not talking to them about is Berkeley. Berkeley last year on their website had some very fine print about letting them know if you weren't going to be taking tests. So you might want to check that out. Okay, let's see. If I applied for
So my
financial
advice would
aid,
be if you're not admitted or rejected yet, I don't think you need to contact them about it. If you're admitted to a
right?
school, you might just want to give them a heads up just in case they have any opinions on it. They might also take like a 3 and give you course credit for it. And maybe you might say, hey, I could get a 3 on that exam and take it. So it's not going to hurt you to contact them. And I don't think you're going to be rescinded, but
Yeah.
obviously it's a case by case basis and university policies change.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right about that. Yeah. Berkeley it was for their admitted students. And basically they just wanted you to let them know. It wasn't like we care or don't care. We just need to know. Let's see. If I applied for financial aid, but my EFC is higher than the cost of attendance, will that hurt me because I applied for financial aid, or can that actually help me in some cases?
I think this is going to be super case by case dependent. If it's a need blind institution who's looking for economic diversity, that could help you for sure because you're going to bring a perspective to the classroom that somebody who's full pay would not bring to the classroom. But if they're need aware, then that's probably going to detract a little bit from your attractiveness as an applicant, unfortunately, and that breaks my heart.
Okay. Yeah, and it is a sad situation. All right, let's keep going here. And we're going to talk about the low key now. Do you say low key or loci? What do you say?
I say low key.
Okay, me too, but I've heard some people say loci,
Yeah.
and so, it's like, um, most important piece of information I can share with you is read what they send you and anything they have on their portal, on their website, anything like that. Like, that's my most important piece of information. And if they don't say not to send anything, I say send something. And I would love to hear your opinion about that, Marcella.
Yeah, I typically recommend to do it regardless. There are some institutions that do not care. Stanford is not going to read your emails in my experience, but they have a short, very, very short update form, and that's
Mhm.
their recommended approach. Berkeley has an update form, etc. If they have an update form and they give you a space to update, that would be my preferred place of contact. If they just say like, hey, check this box and we'll get back to you 2 months from now, and the common data set doesn't say that it's ranked, then I would send something. Yeah.
What
Show
if they
them.
specifically say, don't send us anything? We don't want to see anything else from you.
I don't know. I'm kind of a rule breaker.
Okay.
I would say one contact, not stalking them. This is from my memory, but when I was a tour guide at the University of Chicago during undergrad, I remember that there was a waitlisted candidate who showed up to campus over like his spring break and just like hung out in our office constantly trying to like flag people down and convince them. And one of the big burly admissions officers had to be like, dude, you need to leave now and please don't come back. This is not a good like indicator that you should be here. So I
Did they
don't
get
want
in?
you to. No, oh God, no, 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 no. Because he had been asked like, oh, the first visit, thank you for visiting our campus. By like the third day, they're like, please, please leave. Right.
Oh, okay.
He was like disrupting tours to talk to people. Anyway,
Oh.
yeah, please be polite.
So I have a story about that too. Actually, my niece was waitlisted at Harvard, and they say don't come up here, whatever. She did. She flew up there, sat outside admissions for 3 days. She wasn't being like a disruptive or rude or anything, but just like waited until somebody would meet with her and talk to her, and she got in. And she's a happy graduate of Harvard. So like
So it's like mileage will vary. It totally
I don't know.
depends.
Yeah, like breaking the rules can clearly work in your
Sometimes.
favor sometimes. She's not exactly a rule breaker kind of kid. She's like very much of
Mhm.
a rule follower kind of kid, but like
Yeah.
she just
I
really felt
think
like she needed to be there.
I think this goes to the common sense kind of idea. A couple years ago, somebody took my post on Reddit where I said, like, email professors at your dream institutions and then follow up on the letter of continued interest. He took the plural professors a little bit too much to heart. And he reached out to me and he said, Brown, I just got an email from Brown's admissions office that said, stop contacting our university. Is this a bad sign? And I was like, what did you do? And he said, I emailed 6 different professors in the same department, the same letter.
Oh
And I
no.
was like, what made you think that that was a good idea? And he's like, yeah, on second thought, probably shouldn't have done that. So this is use common sense
Yeah.
when thinking about how to get off the wait list. If you are polite, if your approach is targeted, but not overwhelmingly like claustrophobic, cool. But don't cross that line.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I'm going to bring up one thing here to just go back. So, Popcorn said that they're not getting any financial aid, not the other way around. So, I think what they meant is that they can pay more,
Yeah,
right?
that's probably going to help you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that'll help. Okay, so let's just get into more about the wait list. So, if you'll definitely attend, let them know. And well, first of all, do you agree? And then how would you suggest that
Yeah,
they
yeah. If they are truly your dream institution top choice, I always like to say that directly, that you are my top choice, and if admitted, I will absolutely attend. That is key. They want to know you're a sure bet. If you've got a couple institutions that you would love to attend, then I recommend not saying you are my top choice, etc. I feel personally it's disingenuous, but for an individual, like, I don't think you're going to get in trouble if you do it per se, but I like to use dream school because you can have more than one dream school.
Of course, I don't believe in dream schools, so I have to put that disclaimer there.
Okay.
Because I don't like kids getting in their head about like any dream
Yes,
schools.
yes,
But if
yes.
one of your top choices and you can say, or I would absolutely love to attend, there's, if you want to
Talk
use dream
around
school,
it.
go for it. Yeah.
Now what I don't like is when somebody says like, you are one of the universities that I would consider attending if
Oh,
admitted.
yeah.
It's like, okay, great. Well, glad that I'm with
One of them.
other
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. So, and I think Maricella is going to be talking to us a lot more about this, but like ways to show them how important you are on campus and why they need
Mhm.
you. But I suggested the kids that they like really dig into what's happening on campus now. So maybe attending an info session, definitely reading what they're putting out on social media, reading their school newspaper, like letting them know like what you connect with and how you can bring that to their campus. Any other thoughts about that part of the Loki?
I love that. So I would recommend looking at their events calendar, seeing if there's any
Oh yeah.
fun things happening on campus the week that you're emailing that connect to what I call your brand, which
Yeah.
is the values you would bring to an institution. And then um, kind of tailoring your letter to the institution itself. So whether that's identifying a class that you want to take and the value you would bring and the value you would gain from it, or a professor under whom you would like to research, it is going to be so much more meaningful if you get them in that letter of continued interest versus just saying, I got straight A's last semester, I was named captain of the lacrosse team, and I'll come if you admit me.
Right. I always say, like, create a picture of you on their campus. Like, let them see how you're going to be involved, how you're going to be doing. I love the looking up events part. Let's see. I got some questions I'm going to go to here. Bate says they don't require additional materials, but one can submit an email with updates, most recent transcripts. Would you say that I can still submit a Loki to them?
That's exactly what the Loki is.
Yes.
Yep. So an email is perfect. I also recommend don't be like, hi, I'm attaching a Loki attachment, because who wants to download an attachment?
Right.
You're just reducing the likelihood that they do so and read it. So just put it directly into that email.
I suggest that they put it directly into the email and attach it so that if they want to be able to like move it over to their portal or something, that they can.
Yes. So that's another thing that you could do is you can send the email and attach it to your portal directly,
Mhm.
just so that it's there. And remember that when you email somebody, that email can go to spam. That person can be out for COVID or maternity leave, etc. And that email lives and dies in that place. But if you also put it on your portal, then
Right.
if your name comes back up in committee, they can see it there. But I don't recommend just portal if you can find a really wonderful email address to contact, because that can definitely cut through the fluff and you're now top of mind for them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, from Nathaniel, he's giving a big compliment. Your post on Loki was so helpful to me after I was deferred from Harvard. I took the advice and reached out to a Harvard prof about my research and Harvard's opportunities in the field. And they responded, and we had a great conversation. I talked about it on my Loki and how I would love to go to a school that is so open to learning. So it sounds like he didn't, like write to 6 different professors.
That's awesome.
And he's, let's see. And at high school, it was so open to learning that a high schooler can contact a physics professor and get a thoughtful response within minutes. I would say it was one of the highlights of my Loki. And then
Super
I
cool.
don't see your link, Nathaniel, if you're trying to link to her
Probably going to
post.
find it.
Huh?
Let me know if you can't.
Yeah. He probably can. Let's see. He's pretty resourceful.
And
Okay.
remember, you might not get a response, and don't take that
Yes.
to heart, right? These are really, really busy individuals. And I feel like students get discouraged and then they think, oh, I'm never going to get off the wait list at this university. And it's not an indicator. If you don't get a response from somebody that you contacted, remember, it's not just a professor that you could contact, a current student, an alum. You can look for, even if you don't know these individuals, go find a club page, a club that you'd like to join and reach out to that individual, like a leader in that club, or see if there's any alums of your high school who are currently at that institution. You could find that on LinkedIn, or you could potentially ask your college counselor for their name, because that could be another really great way to open a conversation with them.
Oh, that's all really great advice. And actually, Carly, would you mind writing down some of those thoughts that she just had about the different? Were you paying attention and listening? Yeah. So I think it was. Let's go through those again because I just want Carly to kind
Yeah.
of get them in the.
So you can contact a professor, an alum, or a current student. And if you're reaching out to a current student or an alum, look for a common connection, something that you have in common with them that might make them more likely to respond to you. So that could be you go to a school's website, you're looking up the debate team. The debate team leaders are listed right there with their email address, or you could go to like stanfordwho.stanford.edu and find their contact information. You can just type in Penn directory and it'll pop up there too. But you contact them and you say, hey, I'm so interested in the debate team. Like, I'm a waitlisted candidate, but like here, I would love to pick your brain about what debate is like at Penn. Or if you find somebody who went to your high school, you can reach out to them and say, hey, we both went to Bellarmine, and like, I'm a waitlisted candidate. Can I pick your brain about your experience at Northeastern, etc.?
Great. And I want to say also, if you can't, the link is getting blocked for some reason. But if you go to November, Novembrr on A2C, and you just kind of search for her name, most of her posts have been about the Loki and the waitlist. So you can find them there. And so, because I was just looking at her page today, a lot of great, helpful information there. So definitely check it out if we can't get the link to work. And let's see. We'll talk about the transcript in just a minute. Well, no, we'll just throw it out there now so I don't forget and don't get lost. Can you revisit where we should put an updated transcript? So, like, do you include that in the letter?
You can, yeah. So you can upload it to your portal. Most portals will have places where you can update for new information or transcripts, etc. You could attach it to your email if you wanted to, or you could just describe your grades. So if you don't have a official or unofficial transcript, don't let that hold you back from saying, I got straight A's this year.
Yeah. Or A's in whatever classes you got in, or, like,
oh, yes.
you can ignore the B's and
straight A's. If you got straight B's and that was an upward trend, say,
Yeah.
I had an upward trend. I
Yes.
got, yeah, totally. I'm just using straight A's as an example.
And any classes that you improved on, you might want to bring that up too, because that might have been an area that they were worried about. All right. So thank them for the opportunity to be considered. Don't complain or whine, and don't ask them why you weren't admitted, and don't assume why you weren't admitted. So, because then you might just be like highlighting an aspect of your application that they were clearly going to be ready to overlook. What do you think about kids like saying, "Oh, I bet you didn't take me because I had really bad grades or my test scores weren't high enough," or
yeah. I would not recommend it. I would not admit to a fault. Just lean into your strengths in those letters of continued interest. Remember, you were waitlisted. There were other kids who were denied. And so there was something that they liked about you. And if they have a committee process, you got through committee. And this is going to be heartbreaking, but I worked in committee at Berkeley. I only sat in one committee on UChicago. But in my experience, the committee process looks like they'll bring, let's say, 300 kids from a region, all of whom got through multiple admissions readers. And then they will debate the pros and cons and move you into smaller and smaller piles of consideration. So there might be kids who get denied who already got to the committee process who multiple other people really liked. Then there are kids who got waitlisted who got to the final moment in committee. And so remember, you might think that something is a weakness. They might not have thought it to be. You could be right, who knows? But somebody was advocating for your admission. So lean into those strengths, really highlight that value so that they can be reminded of that value and potentially revisit you.
Right. And then I like to advise that they use their normal word choices, friendly voice. Don't try to come off like, you're like super Mr. Intellectual. If that's not you, if that's you, then cool, that's fine. But
And don't sound like my voice, because I had to pull down some information on Reddit, like delete templates, because kids were sending me, hey, can you review this Loki? And it's exactly my language with just their name popped in there. So yeah, definitely be authentic through this process.
That's why I don't put a template down or offer one anymore, because I had the same thing. I'd kind of made a template that, and then what I realized, it was inhibiting kids' own creativity also, like when they weren't, sometimes when they didn't have my template to use, then they were coming up with more creative ways to kind of justify, put the information in ways I might not have thought about. So,
for sure.
Allow yourself to like use your brain. We're going to tell you what you need to include or what we suggest that you include, but like you figure out how to present it in a way that represents you. I'm kind of curious about this, what you think about this. I say to keep it around 500 to 600 words. Are you okay going longer? Okay.
Yeah. A page in Google on, 10 to 12-inch font. Yeah.
Okay. Include updates. And that's like your grades, stuff you're doing. You can bullet point these. I usually suggest if you want to. What kind of things do you suggest that they include as far as updates about them?
Well, an update could be a whole lot of things. So don't just think that it's a great grade or an award. It can also be something that you learned in the classroom. So, maybe your European history class learned something and you're connecting that to what's happening currently in Ukraine. Awesome. That's an update on how your brain is growing. Or it could be a new responsibility that you took on at your job or in your extracurricular activity. That doesn't even have to be, oh, I got named captain. It could just be, they trained me for the register at Nothing Bundt Cakes. Great. Tell them that, because that's showing new responsibilities, new skills you could potentially bring to campus.
Also, you can, I think I've seen students include additional family responsibilities. Like let's say something's happened in your family that you've had to take on additional responsibilities. And that's always something colleges want to know about. And personal goals that you've reached that might have been something you wanted to do in high school. And it could be anything from, something physical to beyond. I mean, like, let's say you want to build like 550 balsa wood structures and you finally did it, or like just anything, like it personalizes them also. It kind of sees you more as a person. And I think we already mentioned this, and this kind of goes into it, but describe something specific from these info sessions, from going to hearing about the dates, story school, newspaper. And if you haven't done that kind of stuff yet, if you haven't been able to get to campus, and then you really need to start exploring these schools. Sometimes you're waitlisted because they're not sure about your interest. And so that's going to be the main thing you need to do.
Now, can I read a list for you?
Yeah.
So in my guide, so you became a National Merit Finalist. You qualified for a prestigious national competition like Tournament of Champions. You placed at a local, regional, or state competition. You won your first game back on the field. You won a departmental or class award like English Student of the Year. Your research, writing, design, or artwork was published or displayed. You got a job or an internship. You were promoted or received a raise. You were named Employee or Student of the Month. You created something cool like an app. You expanded your club. You're partnering with other schools in your district. You earned a lead role in a play. You were named captain. You led a successful fundraiser. You advocated for something that you're passionate about. You took on an additional responsibility in your family. You achieved a personal milestone like losing 40 pounds. There are so many things that you could potentially put, and don't necessarily think that it's too trivial. I mean, you probably wouldn't say like, oh, I won this new, got to this new level in my favorite video game, but like, think about all of the cool things that make you you, and whether or not you can share that with an admissions office.
Yeah. And two things that you said I want to touch base on, and I've forgotten the first one now, but the second one, the video game level. And don't mention it maybe unless like you're super highly ranked. If
Okay.
you're
So
yeah,
yes, one of my student waitlist strategy session a kid who found me on Reddit a couple years ago was, I forget, he was an esports competitor and he
yeah,
was really, really good. And he leaned into that in his letter of continued interest to Brown and he got off the waitlist. He contacted the like captain of the esports team
yeah.
at Brown, had a lovely conversation. So if it's like your brand, yeah, lean
Right.
into that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So don't think video games are taboo if that's kind of a big part of who you are
Sure.
and where
Good
you
point.
spend all your time. And this, I think, Simon, is a super important question. I'm going to bring this up here because this comes up all the time throughout college admissions for some kids. How do you word these achievements so you don't seem as you're bragging? And first of all, I want to say that, like, it's okay to brag. Like, they want to know how amazing you are. And you have to tell them and show them. And so is there a way that you would suggest wording it so that kids don't feel like they're bragging, or do you just like say brag?
Well, I mean, like, if your mom just bought you a yacht, you probably shouldn't feel like my mom just bought me a yacht. That's new in my life, because then that's just gonna make all of us grumble. But in terms of not bragging, I like to connect what you did or accomplished to who you would be on campus. So instead of
Right.
saying, "Look at me, I won English Student of the Year," you could say that you're so proud to have been named English Student of the Year, and you are thrilled to take English classes at the university like blank and blank.
Yeah.
Right. And that helps them see something as not just the kid is full of themselves, but the kid is full of really great value that they're going to bring to the university.
Yeah. That's great. I like that. And then Simon also asked this: do you recommend being straightforward rather than creative, like in the personal essays? And I just want to say, in the personal essay, it's totally okay to be straightforward. You do not have to be creative. But I'm going to let you answer the part about the wait list.
You can definitely be straightforward. If you're super creative, go for it. I mean, don't be as creative as U Chicago's extended essay. Like, I had a kid a couple of years ago who talked about, do trees have autonomy in that essay? And it was a really awesome essay. Like, that's a little weird. I would not recommend that for a letter of continued interest. But remember too that it doesn't have to be a letter. Like, let's say that you're really, really great creative visually. You could potentially do a little video. You could do some artwork. You could sing a song. Like, really lean into your strengths here and don't necessarily play into our strengths or our, comfort
Exactly.
zone.
Yeah, that's why a template's not good. I saw a student last year who did a newsletter. They like created a newsletter that was kind of like all about them and like basically like why you need to bring me to your campus. And it had all these different little areas that we've been talking about, but they put it into the form of a newsletter. That doesn't mean that a straight up letter isn't going to work fine too. It's kind of,
Totally.
your comfort zone is what's best because you never know how something that gets really creative is going to hit somebody, and never ever ever let the message of what you're trying to say get obfuscated by the creativity, you know.
Mhm.
Um so let's see how to get down to here. Nope. Yep, specificity is the key. And then let's see what's left. We talked about this a little bit about the format. So what I usually suggest, and I'm interested to see if you feel the same way. I usually suggest, unless they say not to, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. I want to get back to that, but I usually suggest sending it to the admissions officer who signed your letter, the regional admissions officer, if you have one and you can find one. And then I like to copy it to the general admissions officer. And then I like to put it into the portal also. Do you think that that's too many people to send the email to? Should it just be to the person you've had a connection with? If you've had a connection with, and if you haven't, then what?
My go-to person would be the regional AO because they're the ones who have absolutely advocated for your admission. So they're the ones who are most familiar with you. If you cannot find your regional admissions officer, I think contacting the person who signed your admissions letter sounds like a great idea. Remember, if they don't have a contact info, like a email address personal to them. It's just admissions at something
Yeah.
something.edu. You can look on their faculty directory and you could potentially find their contact information directly. I like to not contact the director of admissions right away. If you're lingering on the wait list in June or July and you want to send an additional low key, I would do the director of admissions then. What I find is that contacting the director of admissions can be fabulous if they're the type of person who looks at their emails and responds. But if they're an incredibly busy person and it's just an administrator who's contacting it, they're going to go, great, thanks, we'll add it to your portal, without ever having somebody really looking at it who's in the power to make a decision. So it's going to be school by school specific. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to know that ahead of time.
So what did you say to do for schools that don't have regional AOs?
Contacting the individual who signed your letter is a great
But that's
idea.
usually the director of admissions, right? Often.
Yep, it can often be. It depends on the school. I've seen a variety of different folks beyond that. Remember too, if you don't have any contact information whatsoever, just admissions at soandso.edu is just fine.
Right. And then when do you think they should send it?
Well, I like to have all of the decisions in hand because I had a student a couple years ago who was really, really upset that they were waitlisted at Harvard and were like adamant that they were going to get off that waitlist. And then they got into Stanford a couple days later. I mean, lucky to be them, but they had worked really hard on a low key that week and then decided not to send it. So I would kind of wait until you hear back from all those schools and weigh the pros and cons of sending out those low key. Mid-April is a great idea. If you're just watching this video and it's late April or it's May or it's June and you're still on the wait list, it's not too late. Follow up with them. Better late than never.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, for those of you who are watching this recording later, for sure. Like if you're on the wait list, send it. What do you think about sending more than one?
I'm okay with that. I would say I don't recommend pestering them. So sending a letter every day or every week is probably not going to make a huge difference. What I would look for is you send your low key. And then I also recommend that students talk to their college counselor. So some college counselors are going to say, I have a 500-to-1 student to me ratio, and I can't help you. Sorry. But there are plenty of college counselors who say, yeah, I'm happy to send a brief update. And in that instance, they can contact your regional AO or the person who signed your letter or just the admissions office in general and say, hey, this is a really good kid. Like, we've loved having them on our campus for 4 years. Here are some of the, highlights of their experience, and they would absolutely attend if admitted. I love both of those together if you can get them. And I love to have them staggered by a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
But again, if you send a low key in mid-April and it's mid to late May and you haven't heard back, there's no harm in sending another short follow-up. Can only help you, I think.
Yeah, that's great advice. And then we have a question here. What do you recommend for these emails to the AOs formatting wise? I'm not sure exactly what he means, but let's just see what you say.
Well, I'm chatty, so I'll just chat and guess what you mean, and you can add more details if I'm missing the point. So for the subject line, you can obviously do something like an update from a waitlisted applicant. That's totally fine, but you can also be creative. So for instance, if there's something happening in their world or in your world, or the world, you can follow up with them. So for instance, let's say that it's Cinco de Mayo, like you can do something like that, and just kind of capture their attention in a subject line. And then always do, dear, and if you have a specific name, admissions officer or director, find their title. That would be great. And their last name. I would not assume their gender identity. So I wouldn't say, dear Ms. So-and-so, if you're not sure if they go by Ms. And I wouldn't address them by their first name unless you're literally on a first name basis and you've met them and they're like, call me Phil. And then I like the body of the email just to be clean, sharp, not just one long, massive letter with no breaks. Sign your name. I like to include some information about who you are so they can find your application really quickly. There's only one other Marcella De Laurentiis in the world. She married into the De Laurentiis family. She's in Italy. You're probably not going to find that my name comes up a lot in the email. But if you are Bob Smith, there might be other Bob Smiths. So if you put your high school or your Common App ID or the city and state that you are in, etc., they're going to be able to match you to your application really easily.
Oh, that's great advice. That's great advice. And then he says, but I think we've already answered this. We'll just read it. Do we include the letter? And I think Marcella and I both agree that the letter needs to go into the body of your email. If you want to put it in a PDF and upload it into your portal, that's fine too. I recommend doing both to get that. Okay, so let's see. We have a few little last. Oh, find your inner Elsa. So after you've sent those letters, don't plan in your head, okay, I was waitlisted from Harvard. I've written my amazing Loki that I got help from, this awesome advice from Marcella. And I am for sure getting in. You cannot think like that. That is not healthy for you. So write your letter, write an amazing letter, send it, but then be like Elsa and let it go until maybe a month later when it's time to maybe do another one. But don't be obsessing over it. Any suggestions to help kids with that?
I would just say that the acceptance rates are infinitesimally small. I saw a graph recently of how many kids were applying to college in any given year, and it is totally peaking right now, guys. It's actually worse for your friends who are in the class of 2025, but it is so high and it's going to go back down. There are a finite number of schools, so it's just getting so difficult to be admitted. Definitely don't let it beat you up if you're not admitted or admitted off the waitlist at a university you would love to attend. There are so many wonderful different pathways that exist for you at different institutions, at a community college, taking a gap year, etc. And that's not a sign of who you will become in the future. So I would encourage, send out that letter of continued interest, find your game plan, what you're going to be doing for the next couple months and next couple years if you don't get in, and get jazzed up about that pathway.
Yeah, great advice. Other tips. I always say update your interviewer and let them know. They might actually have some suggestions for you. Is that something that you recommend?
Yeah, a lot of them will just go, yeah, grumble, grumble year after year. My amazing kids don't get in.
Yeah, most of them will say that.
They might have some advice for you, and certainly they don't mind hearing your interview is pivotal to my desire to attend this school. Thank you so much for your time. Blah blah blah.
Right, and I think a lot of them just enjoy being updated to know. But yeah, they're probably going to grumble because they loved you and they're frustrated now. What about letters of recommendation?
I'm okay with sending one additional, but I want you to make sure that that additional letter of recommendation is going to be amazing, because I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but there are some people that they go, oh, I could get my, something to write me a letter of recommendation. Or my dad's boss's cousin's uncle who went to that school. They don't know you. And so that letter of recommendation is going to be like, some kid that reached out to me wants a letter of recommendation, so here it is. It's not going to really feel genuine or convincing. So don't just spam them with any letter of recommendation you can potentially get. Think about, like you just said, who's going to show a side of you that you otherwise didn't show in the admissions process, or who's going to solidify your brand, your value that you would bring to that institution. Remember too, that you can have a conversation with that person or send them a letter before they write it with a few things that you would like to have highlighted. Obviously be super polite and don't say, I want you to write XYZ, because that is not okay. But saying, would you mind highlighting how I'm really resilient and bounce back from challenges, if that's something you think is part of the value you would bring an institution.
I also find that people are happier to write a letter for you if you really go into the reason why you're asking them specifically. And so if it's your boss or a club coordinator or your pastor or, whoever knows you in a different way, if you tell them why you're asking them, like why they see a side of you that you don't show to other people, that can make them feel a little bit more important because they are, and want to write about you in a little bit of way. And I do suggest giving them some ideas of like your experiences with them, what you've learned from them, how you've grown, so that
Yeah.
they can talk about that.
I think that's brilliant advice. And that also connects back to reaching out to a professor or a student,
Mhm.
alum, etc. Don't just say, hey, yo, can we jump on a call and chat? Nobody wants to just jump on a call and chat. They want to like watch Netflix in their free time,
Right.
right? But if you can show some interest, some commonality with them, you find their research really fascinating, or you went to the same school and you have like things in common, etc., they're more likely to say yes. So when you go up to your boss or your pastor or your club coordinator, kind of talk about what their mentorship has meant to you, or what
Exactly.
the club has meant to you, etc., and how it has shaped your skills, your value that you would bring to the institution. And then they're going to feel more willing to help you.
Exactly. Reach out to your regional admissions officer. We've definitely talked about that a lot. And then I love that you talked about reaching out to your school counselor. If they can write a letter, great for you, but also they just might have suggestions
Mhm.
for what you could do. And frequently school counselors are in contact with the regional officers. So
Mm.
in ways that you're probably not even aware in some schools. So I thought that was great advice that you gave too. And I think that's the end of my slides. I'm going to close this off, but I'm going to let you kind of like, I'm going to close remove from stream. Okay. But Marcella, what did I miss? What are like some main key points that like you feel like we need to like go in here with the kids?
Well, I would say that every year you're going to get advice to just give up and don't pursue the wait list. And other folks are going to say, go after it. You're for sure going to get in and you don't need to deposit anywhere else. You got to find that middle ground. So you have to say to yourself, I'm going to arm myself with data. How many students are admitted off the wait list each year? So for instance, at Duke, last year, they admitted 381 students off the wait list. That's pretty good, right? So if you're armed with data and you're like, they do admit people, and
That's
I'm
using
going
that
to
common
try it.
data set she was talking about
Mhm,
earlier. Yeah.
mhm. And I'm going to try it. I say go for it. As long as it's not going to impact your mental health, then I say go for it, because you really don't have anything to lose at that point. And if you just say yes to the wait list, I don't think you're very likely to get off of it personally. So that's the biggest thing that I would say. And then I would just recommend like look back on your application and note your strengths and your weaknesses. Sometimes we have a lot of growth between now
Yeah.
and January 1st
Huge.
or November 1st. And there's things that you wish you had highlighted. Don't ever say, oh, I wish I had highlighted XYZ, or I messed up, or here's an essay that I wrote for another school that I really love, and here it is for you guys. But think if there's something that you just missed the mark on. You look back at the Y University and it's just very generic, and you're like,
Right.
ooh, I could have done a better job on that one. That's a really great opportunity for you to pivot and do it now. Oh, and again, I'm really chatty. So I thought of one other thing is if there was an optional essay or an optional video, so Duke
Hmm.
has an optional essay, you Chicago and Brown have optional videos, etc., and you didn't do it, now's your chance to do it. It's not too late. I would attach it to your Loki.
Okay. That's great advice. Um, yeah, oh shoot, I forgot what I was going to say, but because I really like that advice. So I didn't know that about doing the Brown video. So that's kind of helpful information to do. I've totally lost what I was going to say, but that's okay because you're like covering all this great stuff. So it's all good. It was a question that I had. But I don't know what it is. Okay, so that's all great. I did remember what I wanted to say before, though. There was something you said about like if got the starring role in a play. It reminded me of a student one time who wrote in their update, and I just thought it was so cute and very like personalizing. Is that like she had never been in a play before, had horrific stage fright, and decided to do a play her senior year and went on stage and did a line. And she was so proud of herself. And she wrote a little bit about that
Super
in
fun.
her update. And it was like such a great thing. And then went on to talk about how, like, now I'm so excited and I've researched the plays that happen in your school and like how I could join them and, and be a part of it. And like, it's making me look and like excited about that aspect of college that I never even thought about, because what you said is so true. There's so much growth that happens in senior year that it's almost a shame colleges don't get to learn about it,
Yeah.
as the
And
students
this
are
really
growing.
reminds me of when I applied to graduate school. I applied to Northwestern, Columbia, NYU, and Stanford. And I was co-editor in chief of a fashion magazine that had just launched online, our first virtual magazine. And so when I sent them a letter of continued interest before decisions came out, I included a link to that magazine. And I actually used a URL where I could track clicks.
Mm.
So I saw that one of the two New York schools had clicked on it, and then Northwestern and Stanford had as well. I am super fortunate that I was admitted into all four of those schools. And I think one of the strong reasons is that I was able to then say, here's what I did in the magazine, and then this is how I'm going to expand on that experience on your campus. And so they were able to see like the visual representation of who I will be. That's not to say spam them with like a ton of video highlights of you at debate or badminton, etc. But if there's something that you can include, like a link to something that's super dynamic and shows you in action, don't be afraid to include that link.
Yeah, I think at this stage, like there's really nothing to lose. I mean, and like this is your time. I kind of say in my post to like let it all out and like write this crazy love letter about like how like you belong together.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is your time to like show them why they need you, why you need them, and really, there's no reason to hold back. Like just totally bare your soul at this part, at this
Mm-hmm.
point. Um, okay, great. So, um, we are going to finish up unless you have any last wise words about Waitlist.
Simon had the question about how do you include a portfolio or visual or instrumental
Oh,
arts.
yeah. Awesome.
A YouTube link would be great, or potentially a link to a Google Drive where you have all of those. Just make it super accessible. And remember, don't spam them with a million things. Be brief. I do have a waitlist guide. It goes into, so you can get the free version of it just on my November like profile on applying to college. But if you wanted more detail, like example letters that had worked, I do have a coupon code. Carolyn, do you mind if I share that?
Not at all.
So the guide is on my website. You can go to helpwithapps.com/shop. And if you put in badass for the coupon code, you get 50% off of that. And then I
Perfect.
also do waitlist strategy sessions. So if kids like really need a lot of help in trying to negotiate off the waitlist, you can use Badass College for $100 off of that. No pressure to buy anything. If you just want the free advice, obviously you've gotten it the last hour. But my Reddit profile has a lot of good stuff there too.
Great. Okay. One last question here. Do I include my research abstract or something like that?
You could. Yeah. A link to it is totally fine. I wouldn't just say, I did research. Here's a link, because they might not click on that link, but you might want to share, I researched XYZ. If the abstract is really short, if it's literally just a paragraph, you could probably just include that directly in the email.
Okay. Cool. And then I think, Carly, are you writing in her helpwithcollegeapps.com /
Help with apps. Mm-hmm.
help with apps?
It was /shop and then 50% off is badass.
Badass for the guide, and 50% off, or excuse me, $100 off for the waitlist strategy session is Badass College. If you guys can't remember it, my email is marcella@helpwithapps.com. Shoot me an email and be like, what was that coupon code?
Yeah, just say, hey, I was at the Badass
Totally
College
fine.
Apps. Yeah.
And it's valid to the end of the month, and that's March 2022.
Yeah, probably good to say because there'll be people watching later. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to let Carly do that. And then we are going to start finishing up. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to be taking off next week. It's my birthday week. So I'm taking off the week and I'm going to California to see my kids. And so I'll be back in 2 weeks, which puts us at March 30th, which is the night before Ivy Day. So we're going to be doing a gratitude session. So I hope you'll come where I'm going to have some surprise guests on yet. I'm going to have a couple of people who work in admissions and some people who are therapists and come on and just kind of talk about kind of grounding yourself as you prepare for Ivy Day for those of you who are really worried about that or who've gone through decisions and the stress of it. So grounding yourself and thinking about what you're grateful for during that hour. So I hope you'll come and kind of be part of the conversation with us. So that's in 2 weeks. Next week off, in 2 weeks, we'll have that. And speaking of mindfulness, we're going to kind of go ahead and finish up. We're going to do a minute of mindfulness and meditation. Marcella says she's going to stay here with us for that. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Another minute? Okay, cool. So let me get my bowl. So I have my bowl here that I like to use. I'm going to do something a little different today. I usually do a 1-minute meditation that I really like, but I'm actually going to read today to you from a book by John Kabat-Zinn called Full Catastrophe Living, because at one time in my life, that was my life, living a full catastrophe. So I learned a lot from that. So I'm not going to use my bell until the end, but what I do want you to do, those of you at home and those of you here with me, is if you're comfortable, go ahead and just closing your eyes if you're comfortable with doing that. And then I'm just going to read a page from this book, and then we'll have a few seconds at the end just to breathe. But while we get started, I want you just to take a deep inhale. And then we learned from Ben last week that your exhale should be longer because that's how your body starts to settle down and your heart rate slows down. So go ahead and now exhale. A longer exhale. And then just be comfortable now. There is a way of being, a way of living, a way of paying attention that's like starting afresh, that is liberating and in of itself right now. This adventure in your life has all the elements of a heroic quest, a search for yourself along the path of life. It may sound far-fetched to you, but we don't have to look very far to reconnect with our deepest selves. At any moment, we are close to home, much closer than we think, if we can simply realize the fullness of this moment, of this breath. We can find stillness and peace right here. We can be at home right now in our body as it is, in this moment as it is. When you walk the path of awareness, you're bringing systemic consciousness to your experience of living that only makes your living more vibrant, more real. The fact that no one has ever taught you how to do this or told you that it was worth doing before is immaterial. Because when you're ready for this quest to find yourself, it finds you. It is part of the way that things unfold like this. Each moment truly is the rest of your life. And now is your only time to live. So I want you to take 3 inhales, and exhales are a little bit longer. And I want you to think about this moment. You've got so much going on in your lives. You've got decisions coming in. You've got the stress of worrying about them. You've got schoolwork going on, whatever extracurriculars you're trying to do, trying to write a low key if you were waitlisted. There are so many things going on, but all you have is this moment right now. And I want you to hold on to that when you start getting overwhelmed. Just hold on to that. You pretty much have everything you need inside of you, this moment right now. Take one more breath. And when you hear my bell, you can begin to open your eyes. Great. Thank you all. Thank you for being here, Marcella. Thank you so much. You, in my mind, I told you this, you are the queen of Waitlist and Loki's, and I know so much about everything college admissions, really, but this one in particular, I feel like you've just like really kind of perfected the best way to approach it. And I really appreciate your taking the time to be here with us today. And Carly, as always, thank you for your support and help. And for all of those who came with us today to be here, thank you. And for if you're watching on in the video later, awesome. I know I got quite a few messages today saying that you couldn't make it tonight, but you'd be watching later, and I really appreciate that. So be sure to reach out if you have questions, if you're watching later, and if I can't help you, I'll reach out to Marcella and see if she can. And thanks for coming to Badass College Apps, where we talk about applying to college, and then we stop and take a breath. And all right. Thanks again, everybody. I'm going to end the broadcast now. Bye-bye.